non-salivary gland ultrasound. It's not a presentation, it's basically what you can say case presentations. I will be showing multiple cases. Normal parotid dimensions are very less studied, and wherever they are there, you should know what the parotid, what should be the normal measurements of the parotid. And we should understand that while doing ultrasound, we are just looking at the superficial lobe of the parotid gland, and for deep lobe, CT and MRI may be done as the case may be. And whatever we are describing, they are mostly at the lesions, they are in the upper lobe and sometimes at the angle at the mandible. We know the parotid and the submandibular glands, they are quite hyperechoic than the muscle, and they show a very homogeneous ecotexture. Submandibular gland measurements, again, they are as mentioned here. Then you should make a habit of measuring them and reporting wherever they are enlarged or reduced in size. So normal glands with intraparietal lymph nodes, sir has explained you in the morning that parotid gland shows normal lymph nodes. You can have enlarged also, but the submandibular gland will not show intraglandular lymph node due to the embryological explanation. So this is an example of a parotid gland where the intraparotid lymph node is grossly enlarged and shows increased vascularity here. So whenever sometimes this patient will come as a pain in the parotid region or swelling in the parotid region, and clinician thinks that is a parotitis, but actually it's just a lymph node enlargement in that region. So that's how we help them in getting the diagnosis. Overall hypertrophy of the parotid glands is quite common, and the normal shape and structure is maintained in these cases. And obese patients, certain races, they are known to have hypertrophy. It is also sometimes seen in diabetics, in liver cirrhosis, or otherwise what you can say alcoholics, and sometimes in uremic patients also you see hypertrophy. Fatty infiltration is it causes diffuse and homogeneous gland enlargement and shows increased echogenicity on ultrasound, and it can make ultrasound assessment of deeper parts of gland difficult due to beam attenuation. Just a minute please.
रेडवाला पेशंट गेला का जिला 2 नोड्स होते ते 2 रिजन्स होते नाही तिचं ते हे करायचं होतं मला AI वर पाहायचं होतं थायरॉइडचे पेशंट ते छोटे नोड झाले मोठीवाले नको ती अटेंडंट नको ते छोटेवाले
So because of the increased attenuation, sometimes you can't see deeper parts of the gland, like fatty infiltration of liver, it becomes difficult, and you can just mention that the parotid is fatty. Even submandibular glands you can see fatty infiltration, but it is more common in parotid glands. So silelithiasis, sylectasis are common pathologies, and ultrasound is extremely good in picking them up. Clinically, patient may have pain, may not have pain, and you can see that there is intraglandular sylectasis here. Even the duct, parotid duct is dilated here, and there is a calculus in the distal duct. And what you can see is the ostium or the opening of the duct shows some edema, and probably because of that there is retrograde dilatation of the system and maybe the formation of calculus. So location of calculus, size of the gland, and sylectasis, all these things you can pick up on ultrasound. So this is other example, submandibular gland. You can see calculus at the origin of the duct, and the distal duct is also dilated to some extent, but more the distalmost duct was not dilated, and probably the dilatation is due to this big calculus or passage of multiple calculi through that duct. But in this the information we can always support the clinical diagnosis. This is an example where there is a calculus here, there is one more calculus in the origin of the duct, and the gland shows increased vascularity. Silolithiasis or the calculi, they are more common in submandibular glands because the saliva secreted from submandibular gland has got more mucin content. 25% of the times the calculus will be multiple, and small calculi at ostium are difficult to visualize, and ductal dilatation should arouse the suspicion. Inflammations, as like in any part of the body, they are also common in salivary glands, and as the case is the gland becomes enlarged, it may show same ecotexture or hypoechoic. This is the normal gland on left side. The right parotid is diffusely enlarged, as you see here, and it shows increased vascularity. This is a submandibular sialoadenitis. So there is no calculus here, and you can see that gland is hypoechoic, is enlarged, interductal dilatation, minimal dilatation is there, and you can see that there is a increased vascularity on Doppler mode. So this one more example of calculus at the origin of the duct. Gland is grossly enlarged, grossly hypoechoic. This is normal gland, this is the affected gland, and you can see increased vascularity on power Doppler. So we where all the three things in size increased, the sialectasis, sialoadenitis, and sialolithiasis, all these things are very well seen on ultrasound and Doppler. This was an example of bilateral submandibular sialoadenitis, where you see beautiful demonstration of the increased vasculature. So all bilateral sialoadenitis is common in viral diseases, sometimes in HIV or other autoimmune diseases also. Abscesses can be seen, they are quite common in parotid glands, because the lymph nodes are there, they get inflamed, sometimes they form abscesses. Then depends on the stage of abscess, you can see anechoic areas with debris, there can be thick walled, they can be irregular shape, and on Doppler they will not show any vascularity. The chronic inflammations make atrophic changes in the gland, the size reduces, and the glands become more heterogeneous. Here this is the normal parotid, and this is a shrunken or reduced shrunken parotid, and you can see little bit more heterogeneity as compared to this, and there were the gland the duct was dilated up to the ostium, but there was no calculus there. Radiation therapy also causes atrophy of the tissue, and glands are no exceptions. This is a little older image, but you can appreciate here the submandibular gland on the left side is normal and the right side gland is small, and you can show heterogeneity as compared to the other side. Sometimes you see this enlargement of all submandibular, all parotid glands rather. You can see this parotid, submandibular, sublingual on both sides. They are all enlarged, and they show numerous cystic spaces. This is the case of Sjogren's syndrome, where this the appearance is due to the glandular destruction and prominent intraglandular sialectasis. Sjogren's can be what you can say secondary. This was a case of rheumatoid arthritis, wherein we could see that the both parotid as well as both submandibular, they were small in size, show heterogeneous ecotexture, and that denote the involvement by Sjogren's. Sometimes simple cysts are seen in parotid glands, and they are termed as retention cysts, and we can just follow them up or aspirate them if required. Coming to neoplasms, rate of neoplasm is low in salivary glands. In parotid gland, you can find the neoplasm more commonly, and in submandibular gland they are less common. But in submandibular gland, the malignancy rate or the incidence of malignant tumors is almost 50%. Therefore, whenever you see any suspicious lesion in a submandibular gland, always advise cytology or biopsy. Whereas parotid, you can depending on the features, you can suggest the further course. Pleomorphic adenomas, they are quite common. They appear as well-defined circumscribed lesions. They can have lobulated border. Sometimes they show acoustic enhancement. Sometimes satellite lesions are there. The larger adenoma may show hemorrhage, necrosis, and you can have a peripheral color flow pattern. These are multiple cases showing adenomas of varying size, shape, little lobulations, posterior acoustic enhancement. You can get cystic areas well within. The adenomas, they are common in both glands. This is example of submandibular adenoma, very well defined solid lesion. Patient was having swelling since almost 1 year. They slowly grow, and you can see some heterogeneity in the lesion and minimal vascularity there. So the cystadeno lymphoma or Warthin's tumor, they are common in elder males. They generally occur near the angle of the mandible, and they are rounded or lobulated, and can have cystic changes with septations. So they are not very commonly seen, and they do not occur in submandibular glands. Lipoma, you can see fat deposition or lipomas in any other structure of the body. They are seen as oval elliptical mass with regular margins and typical striated appearance. It is sometimes difficult to differentiate from the muscle, but the shape, the elliptical shape, and with striations, that gives you idea that this was a lipoma. This is a case of submandibular lipoma where you see this elliptical mass is showing striated appearance. So when to suspect malignancy? The features are same as you expect in other imaging, other regional imaging, that heterogeneous ecotexture, irregular borders, infiltrations, some acoustic shadowings due to more hypoechoic structures, and on Doppler you can have increased vascularity. This can lead us to give the possibility of malignancy. So spindle cell carcinomas are rare but highly malignant variety of squamous cell carcinoma, and they can occur in the salivary glands, and you can see this heterogeneous lesion with very high vascularity. Primary echodermoid neoplasms, they are also seen in submandibular in the parotid gland here, and it appears as a irregular, poorly defined mass, and we can have this heterogeneous internal architecture. So these are not ultrasound diagnosis. You can, on ultrasound, you can mention that this is more likely malignant or more likely benign lesions. Most of the lesions are either due to after cytology or a post-operative after resection of the gland. Submandibular glands lymphomas are very rare, but gland glitz rarely involved. In secondary lymphomatous deposits can be there, as seen in this case. In both submandibular glands show nodular deposits of lymphoma. This was proved on FNSC. Apart from masses, you can have certain other indications for regional ultrasound in the parotid region or submandibular region. So this was a case, patient came with painful parotid region, and what we could see is a thrombus in the retromandibular vein. Right from external jugular vein, the retromandibular vein was thrombosed. The etiology was not known, and the Doppler, the artery showed the flow, whereas the vein is dilated and there is no flow in the vein. Certain other lesions which are common in, especially in the parotid region, are lymphangiomas. Lymphangiomas, they occur in anterior and posterior neck, but sometimes you can get involvement of the parotid region also, and they are caused due to maldevelopment of the lymph channels, more commonly seen in younger children, and they appear as multiple cystic spaces, and there may not be any internal echoes, or sometimes you can see internal echoes due to stagnation. They will never show flow on color Doppler. Parotid infantile hemangioma we may come across quite commonly. They appear as an enlarging parotid mass in infants, and the median age of diagnosis is said to be 4 months, and they can have a cutaneous component, that is strawberry lesion. And ultrasound, you see them as a echogenic parotid mass showing the lobulated appearance, and if you do Doppler, it will show very high vascular pattern, and all the artery vein both would be dilated, and that artery will show very much increased flow in the systole as well as diastole, as well as the venous will show gross amount of flow. AV malformations are also common in neck region. Rarely they extend to the parotid region. This was a case wherein there was swelling in the parotid region, and it was heterogeneous appearance. Large cystic areas were seen, and on color Doppler you could see the lesion is full of blood picked up by Doppler signals, and you can see multiple areas of aliasing there. The PRF has been increased here to double almost, but still you see these areas of aliasing. And at that aliasing point, if you do a Doppler, the spectral Doppler shows increased systolic as well as diastolic flow, highly increased rather. And the diagnostic feature is the pulsatile venous flow, that is the arterialization of venous flow, that gives us a diagnosis of AV malformations. They are amenable to further treatment by intervention radiology. So our role, again, like in I have said while discussing lymph nodes, to identify the pathology, we should look for any other additional non-palpable lesion, try to characterize the lesion, give possible etiology. We may not give or should not give a histopath diagnosis. We give them as benign and with possibilities, and advise FNAC biopsy whenever required, and of course follow-up of these lesions. So this was just an case overview of salivary gland lesions, and I think we have one case here. We'll try to find out.